Welcome along then back to the Skip Barber eRace series as we return stateside. It's time for round 5 of the season as we're officially past halfway in the championship. Can any driver on the grid halt the charge of the near faultless Johnny Guindy? 7 wins from 8 races. A bump in the road last time as Sven de Vries was victorious in the second race at Silverstone. Today though, the host this evening, a fantastic, challenging roller coaster of a track. It is, of course, Road Atlanta. Myself, Lewis McGlade, alongside me is Elliot Bishop. It is good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely, Lewis. It's good to have you back as well. I know that you were off casting the 24 Hours of Le Mans, so I'm happy to have you here. I took the reins during the race at Silverstone, which I'm sure you were sad to miss out on. But yes, we are here at Road Atlanta. Actually, admittingly, one of my favorite tracks, if not my favorite track. This is a very fast, very fast track that relies on, maintaining a lot of the speed that you're holding outside of the, corners like corner 7, just before the back straightaway, where you're going to want to carry as much speed as possible, which we're seeing right now. Messing that corner up can ultimately mess up your racing day. So we'll see a lot of contention here. There's a lot of passing opportunities and passing zones on this track. So hopefully we will see the likes of Sven de Vries bringing it back to Guindy, as we did see in the last round. Guindy wasn't able to get that 8 race wins in a row. And this track specifically is one where if you're held off by cars attempting to pass, you're actually going to be set up for the cars behind to make a pass. So this will be one of those tracks where we're going to see a lot of head-to-head battle, and ultimately holding your racing pace is very important.
Well, it's going to be a very, very tricky track to go racing at because, of course, you've got long straights to defend on. It's going to be a fantastic race, I'm sure, of course, with the same format as always. 15-minute race 1, 15-minute race 2, and we're in the 10-minute qualifying session to set the grid for the first race. Whilst we're here, though, Elliot, you're joined by a very special guest.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have Joe Manito, the COO of Skip Barber. And Joe, welcome.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
So, Joe, we're into I think this is the 6th round now of the Skip Barber eRace series. I just wanted to, talk to you for a little bit and just get a few thoughts and see how you guys at Skip Barber and you in specific have been feeling about this series, it being one of the first, kind of moves you guys have made in sim racing.
Yeah, so historically, we've had a relationship in sim racing with some licensed cars out there. We did some work with iRacing back in the day. Still work with them a lot. But in the real world, we've been taking simulators around with us to different car shows and getting people in simulators and doing hot lap challenges and taking the fastest drivers from that and then bring them into a school and see if there's any correlation between the skills they were building on the simulator and what they were doing in real life. We saw a really good result from that. And this is something we've wanted to do kind of at least the last 3 years, is figure out how to do a real online race series and a driver search. So with the opportunity to be home a little bit more and have a little more time to work on different projects as opposed to being on the track every week, we put a little more energy into this eRace series and created a great relationship with the guys at Torque. We're really happy with it.
Yeah, I think historically we've seen a lot of different series ultimately look into karting for prospective drivers and bringing them up and putting them through different racing programs, one of them being Skip Barber. But it is definitely interesting to see the world kind of opening their eyes, and Skip Barber ultimately being one of the first racing programs to look at sim racing seriously as a stepping stone. So it'll be interesting, as we, learn more and as this continues to develop, of what those quirks are with sim racers that you have to, potentially bad habits that you have to work on with them, or just the path to the podium per se, with that particular type of driver. Ultimately with a kart racer, it's pretty set in stone of what to expect when they show up at a track wanting to drive a formula car. So it will be definitely interesting to see what the transition is going to be for these sim racers. We've seen people like Brian Hidecotter, who started out in Gran Turismo, and then they develop all the way up into the point that they're racing a real world GT3 car. So I wonder if you have any predictions of what those things will be that these guys will have to work on when they're coming out of the sim and into the real world car.
Yeah, so coming from a go-kart into a Formula car is a lot of difference, right? So you've got a much bigger vehicle. You have suspension you're working with. You have a lot more power now. So there's a lot of things you need to kind of relearn as you come out of a go-kart. So very similar, I think, is what we're going to see in the sim racing piece of it, is just kind of figuring out what those things that are intrinsically different between the driving skills. But at the end of the day, my opinion is that in the simulator, you have a lot less feedback and a lot less sensory input. So when you get into the real car, the sensation of speed, the actual feel of the G-forces, I think it's actually going to help them educate their car control skills more so than going the other way. So we'll see. I mean, the experiments we have run with guys that have come out, it's been really nice to see that the car control in their hands are and their weight management is all figured out from, essentially driving in their basements.
Yeah, and I think, with that being said, how do you think that the, sim racing, how do you feel sim racing is going to kind of fold into the real world of motorsports? Because we've seen a little bit of it with like Lando Norris, who spends a majority of his time on sims, and now he's made his way into the cockpit of a Formula One car. Do you foresee, more, not only more sim racers ultimately stepping up into the world of racing, but also, vice versa, where, the real world drivers actually step down into sim racing, or, maybe not a step down, but a step across into the world of sim racing to have more of a format and more opportunities to train?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. That's what it looks like. That's the way the world's going right now. With how the barrier of entry to get into sim racing is so much lower than any other form of racing, just on a dollar basis, that you can spend a couple $1,000s and have a pretty darn good rig to go drive in. And with how good these simulators have gotten at that level, I mean, I don't see a reason why someone wouldn't say, hey, I'm going to go practice my driving skills. I do it myself. So first time I went to New Jersey Motorsports Park when I was 22 years old, the first thing I did was jump into iRacing, or whatever. I forget where we had it. I think it was on iRacing, and learned the track, and it was huge for me there. So I think as the support from the industry gets larger, more opportunities like this for drivers to start somewhere and go somewhere in the real world, I think that sim racing is definitely going to expand.
Awesome. Well, Joe, it's been a pleasure having you on. I appreciate it. Any last closing thoughts?
Yeah, just want to remind everyone watching that you could be here jumping in the simulator here and running and getting this season in the full and the Skip Barber Formula Series with us this year. So it's I think the biggest differentiator between what we're doing with a lot of the other series here is that we're trying to grab as many people and as many amateur drivers, get them into our system here, do a real driver search, and hopefully get the fastest drivers out into the real world and help them build their career and their driving careers.
Awesome, Joe. Thanks, man. I appreciate you joining us.
Wow, Joe Manita there joining us, the COO of Skip Barber. What a fantastic guest for us through this qualifying session, which you can see on your screen now. And a shock to absolutely no one, Johnny Guindy on the pole position, 22.501, a couple of tenths clear of a very tight battle for second, though.
Yeah, what's crazy is I've actually driven this car on this track the first week that I've actually put myself behind the wheel. And for reference, I was running about a 28.7, so they were going quite a bit faster than I was. So that's a bit impressive, as we just saw Kerstetter actually end up in a little bit into the weeds there, but he was able to collect himself. But yeah, with these short lap times, ultimately, we're going to see more laps in the race, right? With this 15-minute total amount of time for the race, we're it's dependent per lap time. It's dependent, ultimately how many laps you end up outputting is dependent on how long those laps are. That's what I was trying to spit out. So, yeah, it's going to be definitely interesting. This, I believe, one of the shortest tracks that we've had in the rotation. We did go to Spa. We were at Silverstone last week, so this will be interesting with these shorter lap times and ultimately more laps per race.
Yeah, of course, we've been to Laguna Seca, we've been to Brands Hatch, and then, of course, Silverstone and Spa, as you said. This is deceptive because it is quite a long track, realistically, but the average speed here is so very, very high. When it comes to the really, like, turn one's a very quick corner up through the S's section, turn 3, then you start going downhill 3, 4, and then you climb back up again. All of that bit is actually very, very quick. T5, which is the one with the big curb on the exit, very fast corner as well. It is hugely high on top speed. And do you know what? I think we're going to see some great racing around here. One thing I'd like to note very quickly coming into this, of course, Sven de Vries took a victory away from Johnny Gindy last time out. Now qualifying at the moment down in 8th place. Not really going well for Sven de Vries.
Yeah, you know what? I think maybe potentially Sven here is looking for the Hard Charger award, because I believe that there is a prize for that. So maybe, maybe he could, he qualified in 4th position, which is about a second off of where Gindy was at. I think a half second. So he ultimately, maybe he's not as fast as Gindy, but as we've seen in this series, a lot of these drivers ultimately they get in the car very late into the practice sessions, and Gindy himself, I believe, just hops in on Monday when the 2-hour qualifying window is open, and he just sets a time for everyone to beat. And ultimately, I think with Sven de Vries, he might develop that pace as these races go on, and we might ultimately see him finding his pace, and then hopefully we'll see him side by side with Johnny Gindy. But for now, Johnny Gindy's going to be holding that pole position, followed by Saxon and Garcia, and then Cadwalder, Gomez Jr., and then there is Sven de Vries back in 6th position. So, Lewis, any interesting names on the list that we haven't seen in the past?
Well, not so much that we haven't seen. We've got some new drivers, of course. Kawashima, who's down in 15th place for the last of the qualifiers, 4 seconds down. Either way, I think we're going to see a very interesting battle at the top lot. 1, 2, and 3 are from the pre-qualifier into the qualifying session, but of course we'll have to wait until race 1 to find out what's going to happen. Well, we're about ready to go racing then. Johnny Gindy on yet another pole position, but things are tight at the top as Nathan Saxon and Charles Garcia are also right up there with him. Should be an incredible race here at Road Atlanta. Going to be a tough one to hang on. Slipstream going to play into big effect there. You can see Johnny Gindy on the pole position. The number 2 car of Nathan Saxon alongside, and directly behind is Garcia. The lights will come on and we'll go racing for the very short run towards turn 1. You can see in the background as they're gridded up round the corner as well. It's a pretty tight grid here at Road Atlanta. We're about to get underway. Can Gindy make it 8 races from 9? He's made a good start. The number 2 car of Nathan Saxon drops in behind, and they're going to go 3 wide in the background. All things getting pretty tight towards the first corner. It is going to be, though, Johnny Gindy just hanging on from the number 2 car, going slightly wide. That's the one in the blue. I believe that might be Cadwalder, who's just made a little bit of a mistake. Sven de Vries made up into 5th place as well. Couple of cars off in the background, like you say. Saxon holding on from Garcia, Cadwalder, and de Vries, the top 5. Pretty tight. Decent launch, though, from that lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Saxon was actually in the worst position if you're going to compare where Garcia and Saxon were starting on the grid, but he made the most of it. Garcia was just actually filed right in behind in that 3rd grid spot behind Johnny Gindy, and ultimately having the if he had the pace, he could have put it to Saxon on the inside of turn number 1. That is especially with when they're starting from a stop position, as Saxon's going to go to the outside here, maybe into a hard braking zone. Johnny Gindy will have the braking zone if he can stay side by side into the left-hander that's coming at the end of the straightaway here. But as we mentioned a little bit earlier, it is this track has many passing opportunities, and this is one of them. But it looks like Saxon is going to go through. Johnny Gindy finding himself back in 2nd position again, with the likes of Garcia off of his rear wing. Lewis, is this going to be another race where Johnny Gindy has to find his paces?
Oh, this is all slipstream. That was a great run off of T7 from Saxon. Made it work, and now Gindy coming under pressure from Garcia. He's seeming to struggle a little bit in the early stages, but I think that's more just from slipstream getting caught out with the chicane.
Look at this.
It depends on whether Garcia is going to fight him or not as we come through turn 2, turn 3 as well, and then down the hill towards the S's section. It is all pretty tight around here, very single file. Nathan Saxon run away, a second clear now. I'm sure that will come in through slipstream as they run all the way over that curb. Watch out for it bumping too much because it can fire you off to the barrier on the left-hand side if you're not careful. They're all snaking their way round. Saxon has run away. Sven de Vries, the fourth car in this train for second place, that one with the black wings in the background, the number 4 car. He's in a direct championship battle for second place in the championship with Cadwallader, so everything needs to go his way. Nathan Saxon as well, only 5 points off the back of Sven de Vries for second place. Things looking pretty rosy for Nathan Saxon.
Yeah, and we're going to have to keep an eye on Sven de Vries as he's going to be having to make his way up the field. It looks like he dropped back quite a bit, and I think it was in the first corner Scattini went back, but now Johnny Gindy to the inside, that's going to be Garcia, and now Johnny Gindy's finding himself in a situation like the last round, round 5. Now Garcia goes to the inside and finds the position, but they're going to be coming across the line here, and Johnny Gindy's going to have the slipstream going up into 1 here. Johnny Gindy going what seems to be the outside, but I think that's just because Garcia was running a bit of a defensive line, and Garcia flinging it out wide here as you're going to be holding as much pace as possible going up through corner number 1 and then into the S's. The second and third corner are actually completely blind, and in the real world you're looking for a lamppost because you're coming up over the crest of a hillside, so maybe we can see an onboard to show that it's completely blind. So now in the stretch between 5 and 6 is a bit of another slipstream opportunity, and then you're setting yourself up for 6 and 7 leading onto the straightaway. So dropping back to Fernandez, we're actually seeing a bit of a pack form, and like we said, or actually this was in the last race that you missed, Lewis. Every single position in this series is one that is being battled for. Every single position that if you end up dropping back, you have to fight every tooth and nail with that driver that is ahead of you. So for Johnny Gindy, he's going to be wanting to find himself able to pass Garcia here, and I think that's Cadwallader going to be going to the inside of Johnny Gindy. Again, Johnny Gindy's dropping back to 4th position, so maybe the slipstream is helping these guys. And like I mentioned, Lewis, this track is one where if you end up getting caught in the crab pot, so to speak, they're going to drag you back, and then you're going to slow down onto these long straights, and you're not going to be set up for the later bits of the track, and ultimately you're going to find yourself in a position where you're off the racing line, and then you're going to be finding or be struggling to find pace.
Yeah, that was a nice attempt from Sven de Vries looking down the inside of main championship rival Johnny Gindy, who's heading the championship, but the only place he's headed in this race is backwards off the podium. For the first time this season, it's not looking so good for Johnny Gindy, maybe struggling with setup and stuff. Even when it comes to a race victory, you can see Garcia is miles down the road as now Gindy's trying to apply pressure. Maybe he's looking after his tyres a little bit. Tyres may come into this. We've seen this at Laguna Seca and places like that where Gindy is the one who really looks after his tyres, and he fires in some good times late in the race. It's not a very long race though, with it only being 15 minutes. Nathan Saxon 1.2 seconds clear at the top. We'll see if Cadwallader can try and break the slipstream. You saw him pulling there over to the right hand side of the circuit, now brings them over to the left hand side. It's not weaving in the sense of like blocking in defense. It's more just trying to break that slipstream, trying to slow Gindy down in a straight line. And you can see he doesn't really need to do it that much. I think there's some more wings on the number 1 car of Johnny Gindy. Not going so well. We've just seen some changes for position as Ibadi's moved up into 13th place. Matt Olsen, a fresh driver on the grid now, down to 14th place. And Scudino Schettini is trying to move his way up the order after some issues into turn 1. Garcia, fastest lap of the race, 23.0. Nice time in the race. There's Matt Olsen, and now on the back of Ibadi.
Yeah, and I think this now Johnny Gindy dropping back.
Gindy's two places, 3 places.
Johnny Gindy finding himself in 7th position for the first time ever in this series. We've never seen him go back this far, and potentially he may have spun out there. And like we've said in many of the other broadcasts, the second that you end up in the position where you spin out, you're actually waiting for about a lap for those tires to cool back down, and especially on this track, as we're going to be coming into 6 and 7 right here, the two right-handers. The rear end is very important here, because if your back tires are completely cooked, you're going to have absolutely no grip, and as you get onto the accelerometer, you're going to spin out coming out of this the corner 7 onto the straightaway that we're now seeing. That corner ultimately sets you up completely for the amount of speed that you're going to have on the straightaway, and especially considering that all these cars are the exact same, all have the exact same engine. Your best opportunity is getting into the slipstream of the car ahead of you. But not only that, if you have a bad entrance to the straightaway, you're gonna lose about 10 miles per hour as the cars behind are going to be chasing you down.
Yeah, Saxon setting the timesheets alight. He set the fastest lap of anyone thus far this lap of 2021. Who was that off the road? It was a baddie. A baddie's off the road in the chicane. Oh, it's a shame, because he was doing quite well in that battle with Matt Olsen, now down in 15th place. My thing with Johnny Guindy, who's now trying to fight Rodriguez Mera to move up another position. This is what we can see on our screen right now. The issue that he's got is if he is running higher wings, remember that this race will set the grid for the next race. So the positions that they finish in now, if the race was to finish now, obviously halfway through, Guindy will be starting from 8th place. He's now going to try and apply pressure to the number 7 car of Rodriguez. Almost backs out of it a little bit. It's now going to look down the inside potentially. Nope, backs out of it. He's going to try and use the slipstream down to the chicane. If he's running higher wings though, this is a massive problem for Johnny Guindy here, because as much as he may have the pace outright in the race, he's never going to be able to move his way up the order from 8th place as Baird drops backwards and behind Jablonski and Bowers, which you can see on the left-hand side where you've got the timing sheet. Can Guindy, does he have the wings? Does he have the legs in the car to get himself up into 7th position? I think he does. Looks down the inside of Rodriguez, and it should be a pretty simple move on the run down towards the chicane. Nice one for the number 1 car. He's still side by side with him. Going to try and outbrake Rodriguez. Does so nicely. Rodriguez didn't really fight that one so much. Understands the pace of Johnny Guindy.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here is, with Johnny Guindy being in 7th position currently, the second that he comes across the line at the end of this race, if he hasn't found a better position as the door gets slammed there on Barres, but if Johnny finds himself stuck in the row here or back in the field, it's going to be very complicated for him to, someone's going off. I believe that's Shepard. The 12 car of Shepard, unfortunately, just losing, I believe, the rear end as they go into corner number 1, which is very important to hold your speed into, because you're ultimately setting yourself up for every corner from 2 to 5. Your pace that you enter corner number 1 is very important. So he's going to be having a hard time finding himself come back to the pace that he was at previously. But actually, someone to focus on is Scattini. Scattini was all the way back in 20th on the first corner of the race, and I believe he drove off into the grass. But now he's found himself he's up in 13th, so he's made up quite a few positions. And now as we're going to go on board with the number 2 plate of Saxon. Saxon's always been in it. He's always been in the top 5. He's always been, knocking on the door of the podium. And my question here is this Saxon's track? Is this a track that Saxon has, put a ton of time into, or is this just the type of racing that he enjoys most, where you're carrying a lot of speed through this track? There's a few S's, lefts and rights, that if you mess up the first corner, like if you mess up corner 2 or corner 3, that completely ruins your pace through the S's. So maybe this is exactly the track that Saxon's been looking for, because not only is he leading this race right now, but he's pulling a page out of Guindy's book where he's pulling away from Garcia in 2nd place. It's almost a 2-second gap here, Lewis.
He's doing a fantastic job. He's not really racing at the moment. He's just running his own pace, and it's going fantastically. For those of you noting at home as to where these drivers are in the championship, Nathan Saxon, who's leading the race, is 4th in the championship, just 5 points off of Sven de Vries, who's in 2nd. Thomas Cadwalder in between that, just 2 points ahead. You can see Shepard off again, overheating the tyres, and I think that's really got to him. The curiosity, and I apologise, I did forget. It's a fixed setup series, so Johnny Guindy can't be running higher wings. I do remember that from Spa. Apologies. But that lays another question at his door. Obviously, he wasn't victorious last time out, and he did 7 races on the bounce at the start of the championship. And we've seen this in motorsport in general, in World Superbikes, if you're watching last season with Alvaro Bautista. There are some times when a driver runs these many races in the victory, and then the first time they're beaten, it's a chink in the armor, and it really costs a lot of that mental strength as Sidney Scattini is going to come under attack from Fernandez now. Ooh. And I think that might be a position drop, pulls out of the slipstream. Oh, sorry, this is with Abadi. Apologies. Abadi and Fernandez.
Yeah, Abadi went to a defensive line there, but it ultimately not only removed the slipstream from Fernandez, but also he had the inside line. So that actually wasn't a terrible idea for him, because he completely closed the door on Scattini, and that would be a move that I would expect to freeze to use on Guindy. But yeah, there's, like you were saying, there's one of as he's looking to the inside, he's not going to have it going into turn number 1. But there's one of two things that's happening with Guindy. It's either, he's not feeling on top of his game today, whether or not had anything to do with the race loss, his first second place, which ultimately second place isn't that bad of a thing, right? But it could be getting to him. Or what I am guessing is that it potentially could be a technical issue, because when he was in the slipstream on that back straightaway a few laps ago, as we were watching, it seemed like he was losing pace as he was catching up to the back of the car, and he didn't want to look to the inside too early on the straightaway. So we might actually, he could be having some technical issues with the steering wheel or a set of pedals or something along those lines, Lewis.
Yeah, it might not be able to reach maximum power on the throttle pedal, of course, if you're running. Oh, don't worry, I won't bore you into it too much. If you're running a set of pedals that run potentiometers and stuff, there could be spiking on it, which what that means is it can run off the bottom when you're like off throttle, so i.e. it's still putting in like 10-15% or something like that whilst you're off throttle, which is really, really bad. Alternatively, it can do that on the top end as well. So when you're full throttle, when you're on 100% power, for some reason the game may sometimes register it as it not being at 100%. That, it's a very easy fix. You just need to clean your pedals, but you have to take them apart, etc., etc. It's a pain. Very much a potential that could be an issue. That said, I would have expected it to have come up in qualifying as well, but he did have the pole position. There might be something a little bit more heading on here as we ride on board with the number 6 car of Ed Kerstetter, who is 5th in the championship, 5th in the race, 29 points off the man ahead. And if he wants to gain some positions in the championship and really get into that top 5, well, why not start now? We're just past halfway in the championship. We're on round 5 of 8. As we look at Scattini, who's trying to move his way up past Matt Olsen as well. This will be the final position he can really gain in this race. And to be fair, based on his pace, I wouldn't put him past him.
Yeah, and if I remember right, going up to Scattini, he's, ultimately he started in the race I think he was in the back of the row, but now he's going to find himself in 12th position. So he's picked up a total of 8 positions since going off in the grass in turn number 1. So Scattini now battling on the straightaway with, I believe this is Olsen. So now they're going to be going side by side, and this is the opposite of a drag race. They're going full speed. They're going to be hard on the brakes here, and the person that has the biggest cojones is going to come through that corner in the position, because the later you brake, the more dangerous it gets and the higher the potential of crashing. But for Scattini, he basically held that line and blocked Olsen, because Olsen can't really turn in if Scattini brakes a little bit later than him. So as we see that, Olsen not in a bad position, ultimately still has the opportunity to get into that slipstream, but Saxon still losing actually a bit of, now. Yeah, he's losing a bit of the pace. He's lost a second on Garcia, just back behind.
And this is it, by the way. This is the final lap of the race. So you can see there's only 8 tenths between them. He should be able to hang on, but there is a lot of pressure. And if he's had a spin, if he's had a moment, these tyres could be slightly overheated heading into the final chicane for the last time. Is there going to be some hesitation from Nathan Saxon? I don't think so. Garcia's closing even further. If it was a lap longer, I'd be saying Garcia is looking very hungry at the moment. But Nathan Saxon's going to come through the final corner to take victory in the Skip Barber eRace series. The first time that he's done so. Great drive from Nathan Saxon, as well from Garcia, as well from Cadwallader. De Vries, Kerstetter rounds out your top 5. Gomez Jr. and your championship leader, Johnny Guindy, off the podium for the first time. Down in 7th place as we pass halfway in the championship.
Yeah, not only the podium, but all the way off of the top 5 completely, all the way back in what looks to be 7th position. That is quite a bit of a loss. So maybe we'll get a little bit of news here as Saxon's going to be celebrating. We've seen him on the cusp of winning a race. Obviously, this is the race that is going to set up race number 2. But starting on pole position here is very important. And like we were saying, it is a crab pot on this track. The second that someone puts you off of the racing line, you lose a massive amount of pace. And this track is all about holding as much speed as possible, exiting 5 into the straight between 5 and 6, then on to 7, where you're basically, it's the most important corner in the track, where you're going to hold all of your speed or create as much speed as possible for your entry to the straightaway so people can't pass you. But Saxon, going back to him, Saxon was knocking on the door in the last race. Him and Sven de Vries, I know we don't remember, it took me a second to remember this, but Sven de Vries and Saxon were fighting in the last corner of the race. Saxon allowed allowed de Vries to go through, and he chose not to battle him in the second to last corner of the last race, which ultimately set him up for Gindy to go through and pass. So Saxon was actually in a position where he helped Sven de Vries win the last race, whether or not Sven wants to allow that, and it put Gindy back in a position where he was defending in third position. So Saxon's always been there, but Sven de Vries was the one that came out victorious in the last race. So it'll be definitely interesting, and that's all at Silverstone. But it'll be interesting to see how Saxon can hold his pace now that he's the guy with the target on his back, starting in that first position.
Yeah, indeed. It'll be the first person to not start from first place that isn't Johnny Gindy. Obviously, Sven de Vries taking a win in the second race as well. That was the 4th podium, by the way, from Nathan Saxon. Has finished second back in Brands Hatch, looking pretty impressive on form at the moment, and the pace, he's looking hungry for potentially a second victory. We'll see what Garcia and Cadwalder can say about it, and if Gindy can come up the order. It's time then for race 10 of the season. We're here for the second race at Road Atlanta, and a bit of a surprise victor, Nathan Saxon, taking his 4th podium of the season and a victory with it. Fantastic work. The second time that we've not seen Johnny Gindy taking a victory in the season. You can see there Nathan Saxon rolling off from the front row of the grid from that pole position. Alongside him, though, it's going to have a lot of pressure from Garcia. Put a lot of pressure on at the end of that race. We'll see if Saxon can start this one with the impressive pace that he started the previous one. Lights are all ready to go. We'll see who can take victory here at Road Atlanta. Nice start from Nathan Saxon, just as good as he had in the launch in the previous race. It is the number 5 car, though, of Cadwalder, who's looking down the inside of Garcia. Sven de Vries didn't really have a particularly great launch from the background there on row 2. So now he's coming under pressure from Ed Kerstetter, who I think has already gained that position. Oh no, I think he backed out of it. And now Gomez Jr. in the number 13 car has moved up into 5th place. Gindy further down the order, now down into 8th position. So he's struggled off the start there, not really taking advantage from it. Gains position on Rodriguez, who I think has been off in the background. We look at Rodriguez now. Big crash from him.
Yeah, and actually Johnny Gindy also losing another position to someone that he's battled with before, Jablonski. And with Schettini just back behind him, Gindy's in a bad position here because he has many people ahead of him that are going to be battling. As we're seeing Garcia going through, potentially looking for the first position on Saxon. And like we've mentioned before, that was corner number 7, the most important corner on the track. And Garcia found a way to pass Saxon for the time being. But this actually is worse for the guys in first and second place than they think, because Cadwalder's just behind and they're not going to have as much pace as the cars behind. So it could actually create a bit of a battle here, as we're going to see 2 sets of 2 cars.
Ooh! Oh, de Vries makes contact!
Oh no, and that's Saxon!
De Vries contact with Saxon, pushes Saxon off. Saxon didn't spin though. Fantastic work from the number 2 car. It's allowed Garcia to run away. Look at this gaggle coming down the grid. We've got Cadwalder in there. Kerstetter behind Gomez Jr., the number 13 car. What a drive thus far. Up into 4th place. Now Sven De Vries looking a bit defensive in towards turn 1. I think he might allow that. I think that was him allowing Saxon back through as a bit of an apology. Now Gomez Jr. is going to try and apply pressure to Sven De Vries, not able to do it. If he was going to make an attempt into T3, I would have taken my hat off for him. Fantastic work. But yeah, touch of contact from Saxon. Now 2.4 seconds off of Garcia. That early pace from Saxon that we saw in the previous race nearly comes or must come into account now, because Garcia is running away with it. And we saw in the previous race, Garcia was so strong at the end of the race. And well, we'll see if Sven De Vries can apply any pressure here and maybe move himself up into second.
Yeah, and a great move there by Sven De Vries to give that position back to Saxon, because he just he had a misjudgment there with the braking zone off the back end of the straightaway. So good for him as they were coming into the dip, which you are in a hard braking zone going downhill. So it is very challenging, but maybe a tip of the hat and a sign of respect from De Vries, because Saxon didn't take him out to give De Vries his first win back at Silverstone. So maybe that's a bit of respect between the two drivers. But now Kerstetter, who's in 6th position, is going to be looking for an opportunity as he's got Cadwalder just ahead of him. Garcia now looking to the outside. I'm not entirely sure who he's going for a pass on, but we're going to be hopping back into the row as there's a 3-wide battle going into turn number 1. I'm not sure if someone dropped out of that race, but Johnny Guindy now finding himself in 9th position. I could only attribute this to either he went out and he was out late last night, or he's got a bit of a technical issue happening with his pedals, because it doesn't seem like he's losing a lot of positions on the straightaway. So it doesn't seem like he has a full amount of speed to carrying himself, and we really saw him leaning on the draft of the car ahead. So it'd be interesting to hear after the fact what's going on with that. But maybe we were talking about the hard charger award, but I don't think he dropped back far enough to achieve that. But Johnny now, Lewis, with the championship and the amount of points, the gap between 1st and 2nd place, I believe, is only 3 points. It's like 35 and 32 points, something along those lines.
Correct.
So how will this affect Guindy's championship position?
Well, Jablonski's going past Kerstetter, and Guindy's trying to get that move back on Schettini. I think he might be able to do it. I think, to be honest, with this, as we've got some side-by-side there, so Guindy is going to get by. Schettini's leaving it down the inside. There's going to be a touch of contact between the two of them out of the chicane. Ooh, tight stuff. Guindy does make the move up, though. I think maybe if there's not a technical issue, maybe he's just not very strong at T7 on the exit. And obviously, you would say, well, how can he? He was on pole position. You can still be strong at a corner, but then weaken it in the race, because there's following people through it and doing all that kind of stuff and actually racing around it is a very different ball game than setting a decent lap time, as Schettini's going to come under pressure from Abadi at the top end, but not going to happen there as we run through 2 and 3. Rodriguez as well has got by Kawashima down in 16th place. Indy maybe going to try and reignite a charge up the order. Like you say, with the championship, I mean, you don't want to be hemorrhaging points. As much as he's got a very comfortable lead in the championship, you can't afford to start hemorrhaging points, because once you start, it's very, very hard to stop the hemorrhaging. Just in the foreground of this, we saw Kerstetter and Jablonski. Ed Kerstetter getting past Jablonski for 6th place. Oh,
and that's
a bit of oversteer
7
there from Kerstetter.
Yeah, and look at the pace that he's going to lose just because he lost a little bit of that rear end. Kerstetter now is in a drag race with Jablonski, and if he can just get in behind, where we saw him dive in behind, he's not trying to take him out and doing a pit maneuver, but he's trying to get into that slipstream just behind, because it's like activating a turbo almost, and you don't have as much air resistance, so you get a bit of speed here. But it looks like Jablonski's going to have the inside line, so Kerstetter's going to be stuck out, and now Sven De Vries is looking to the inside, or I believe that was Gomez Jr. that actually slipped through. So now Saxon is fighting back up to 2nd position, which is good for him. And now there's going to be a bit of a battle, 3 cars for 2nd place. And hopefully these guys can hold it together. But the victor here is going to be Garcia, as he's able to hold 2 seconds gap between him and the guys behind.
Yeah, Garcia's gone. Saxon's also gone. He's 3 seconds up the road from this. Gomez Jr. leading De Vries and Cadwalder. De Vries and Cadwalder, of course, battling in the championship for 2nd place. Guindy now up into 7th position, got by Ed Kerstetter. Now sets his sights on Jablonski. Could be a bit of a champion's drive from the number 1 car. I don't think victories really on the cards at the moment, but he could move up towards the podium, maybe close on the back of Cadwallader and Sven de Vries. He's got Jablonski to challenge, though. 8.5 minutes left in the race, so there's still plenty of time for our championship leader as Cadwallader picks up a lot of the dirt on the exit of T7. That's going to halt his charge whilst trying to get away by Sven de Vries. De Vries picking up the slipstream from Gomez Jr. This was where they changed position on the previous lap. It was into the chicane, then they were side by side through it, and Cadwallader basically had nowhere to go in the whole scenario. That's why he didn't really take advantage from it. The gap for the race lead, by the way, it got up to 2.7 seconds, now down to 2.1. Saxon's really trying to apply some pressure here to Charles Garcia and maybe see if he can take a second consecutive victory. 23.2 from Garcia, 23.5 from Saxon. It's not quick enough.
Yeah, and I think Saxon right now is probably thinking to himself that De Vries, if it wasn't for that rear end bump, that he would have been in that position to fight Garcia. But now Garcia is just running away with it. As to correct myself, that was actually those three cars that we were looking at. That battle was actually for third and not for second. Saxon, like you mentioned, Lewis, is actually 3 seconds ahead of Gomez Jr., who's in third position. So now Saxon ultimately has clean air, and he's looking and setting his sights on Garcia, and all he has to do is drive quickly and just a bit quicker than Garcia to close that gap. But as we're seeing right now in live timing, it looks like that gap is actually expanding quite a bit. And just to go back, I mean, these guys between qualifying, the gaps were very small. Like I said, I paid my $20 and I signed up this week and for Monza, and my pace is a lot further off these guys than I would expect. But what's interesting is that in a race like this between Saxon and Garcia, if your lap times are not much different than a tenth, how are you going to close almost 3 seconds of a gap? It's very complicated if the guy's driving on his paces, as a body is going to be having the door slammed in his face by Scattini, and Scattini's going to be holding 9th position, so he's able to find quite a bit of pace. And now ultimately Johnny Guindy is going to be finding himself back up in 7th position where he started this race, but he's been doing plenty of battling, and in the position that he's in, he's done all of this work, and now he's just finding himself at an equivalent position and not much further ahead. So we'll be keeping an eye on the gap between Guindy and Jablonski, because potentially Guindy might actually be able to find another position. And if he's lucky, he's basically got to manage the damage at this point, right? Like, he's got to find the way to get as far ahead in the grid right here in the row to make sure that he secures as many championship points as possible. Because guys like Saxon and Garcia, as we go further into the series, if they're just extremely consistent, it's going to be very hard for Guindy to catch up to them. That is a real world problem that a lot of racing drivers have, and when they're holding their championship points, is that if you make a mistake and you end up with a goose egg, it's very complicated to be able to create that gap again, especially when first and second points are separated by only a few points.
There's a position change there as Cadwallader's got by Sven de Vries. Just saw that as we're looking backwards from Gomez Jr. Cadwallader now up into 4th place. Again, these two drivers battling for second in the championship realistically at the moment. De Vries then passed. He said coming into this round, by the way, that he would be happy with 2 times 4th place finishes. He was 4th in the first race, now trying to battle for 4th in this race, just looking for a bit of consistency. The only way to catch gaps, by the way, it's 1.5 seconds for the lead now. The only way to catch gaps like that in a race format like this is relentless consistency. Apply the pressure and try and fight your way through. Gomez Jr. is out of the race. Gomez Jr. is out of the race from 3rd place. Cadwallader now moves up into 3rd. He's back in. He's back. It's all right. It's just a timer. Okay. So Gomez Jr. maybe a little bit of a connection thing there for Gomez Jr. That's a bit of a concern, especially considering he's the number 13 car and running up on the podium. Going to have to defend a little bit from Cadwallader and De Vries behind. Jablonski and Guindy all part of this battle as well. This is a 5-car train for the final spot on the podium. 4 minutes left in this race. And just a reminder to you, if you want to take part in the championship as Gomez Jr. again dropping down the order, I think it might just be a connection thing. Let's keep our fingers crossed. If you want to take part, you can do. Head over to the Skip Barber eRace Series site. We can get you onto the grid. You can take part in the pre-qualifier to get you onto it. I think that might be Gomez Jr. out of the race properly this time. Cadwallader then up into 3rd. De Vries. Guindy has got by Jablonski. So Guindy back in the top 5. And we've got the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 in that top 5 place as Jablonski's been demoted a position to 6.
Yeah, and Jablonski almost finding an issue there with Gindi, who found himself up into 5th position, but ultimately only finding one position as I believe that was Gomez Jr. Unfortunately, I believe that's the dark horse of this series, and unfortunately, I believe that's going to be a connection issue, which is just unfortunate for him. But yeah, Gindi was able to find another position. Now Gindi is going to be battling with the likes of Jablonski off of his rear wing. So Jablonski knows he's seen Gindi plenty of times in the race, but has never had an opportunity like this one to be able to catch up to Gindi. Jablonski's been nowhere near Gindi, as Gindi's been basically running this series at his own pace. But now Jablonski, he says, "Welcome to my side of the track where we race and we go head to head." So Gindi's going to be looking to defend that position from Jablonski on this straightaway. So hopefully, he in his eyes, he doesn't lose that position. But going back in the road quite a bit, actually, we have a new guy in the series, Kawashima, who's actually a 42-year-old from Osaka, Japan.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to have people from all over the globe taking part. Of course, all have to be based inside North America, and obviously that being where he's from, and now resides in North America. And Kawashima, they're in 16th place on the road. Maybe not been the strongest round, but to get onto the grid, you've got to put some pretty decent lap times. So obviously very, very pacey. And if there's one thing that I know about sim racing, is age is no barrier. Whether you're young or old, you can definitely take part. And we would recommend to come and at least give yourself a try in the Skip Barber eRace series, because it's a good fun thing to be a part of. There's lots of prizes for you to go and grab across the championship. More information can be found on the website. Of course, you can go and Google it, or you can go on to skipbarber.com/eRace-series and go and find out what it's all about. Jablonski again applying the pressure to Johnny Gindi. Like you said, it's Gindi normally fighting at the front end of the field and running away with it. Jablonski saying, "You're in my territory now, son. Let's see what we can see what we can make you do."
Yeah, he almost lost it there. I believe that was Wilson. Yeah, Wilson's just letting the cars go by on the straightaway. He just parked it as he's going to be a lap down now. But yeah, that's definitely a big piece of sim racing, and we've seen a lot of legends come back to sim racing and be able to continue their legacy. Because sim racing, like you mentioned, there's no barriers for entry besides getting yourself a wheel or a controller and just doing it. So. Yeah, I mean, for Kawashima to be able to even qualify for this, the gap between a lot of the drivers is not even it's tenths, right? So for me, I was like 5 or 6 seconds off the pace. So good on him. Scattini's going to drop back now and lose a few positions. A body and short going to be able to go through there. I believe a body actually picked up another position on short as well. So yeah, super unfortunate. But Johnny Gindi finding himself back in the top 5, managing the damage that this race is going to do to him in just a championship lead quite well. But I think with 22 seconds left, we might end up having one final lap, as Garcia and Saxon are going to be coming across the line here at some point. I believe that they're going to be on the back straightaway.
This is the last one.
This is the last. Okay, this is going to be the last lap here. So for Garcia, if he can come across the line or just after that clock drops down to 0, he's going to be finding himself in his first race win of this entire series, which is a huge development for him. And Saxon finding himself in second, where he finished third last race, Lewis.
Yeah, Saxon's done a great job to at least try and close the gap down to Garcia. Garcia's done a great job, though, maintaining the pressure as Saxon did in the previous race. Garcia, we saw at the start of the season 7 consecutive victories from Johnny Gindi, but this is our 4th different one in a row as Garcia comes out of the final corner and takes victory in the Skip Barber eRace series at Road Atlanta. Saxon behind and Cadwalder on the podium in that tough fight for the second place of the championship with Sven de Vries. Johnny Gindi, our championship leader, down in 5th place. Then it's Jablonski and Kerstetter. We've got Scattini on our screen at the moment. Could have been a great race up inside the top 8. Unfortunately, not quite the case, as he finishes just short of Short and Ibadi. Decent run, though, into 10th place after being off in the gravel trap in race 1. Nice move into the top 10. Yeah, I think for him, maybe for Scattini, he's thinking to himself, I didn't get the position that I wanted, but I had fun. I had fun battling through the field, because definitely starting in 20th and passing by 10 people is you're basically making a pass every lap. So
Yeah, big shout out to him and his ability just to be able to catch up. It was unfortunate because Gomez Jr. was disconnected. He was in the top 5, and towards the end of the race, ultimately, he just I believe it was a connection issue, and he just ended up disconnecting. So that was completely unfortunate. But eyes to be set on Garcia. Garcia finishing his first race in first position. Now we have 3 different race winners in this series. My, oh my, is this going to speak to the next race at Monza, Lewis?
Well, for Charles Garcia, for those of you who don't recognize him in this championship, you've got the likes of Guindy and De Vries and Cadwalder and stuff like that. This is Garcia's second round of the championship. Did Silverstone and then has come here and done Road Atlanta. What an impressive effort it's been from him. I think he was 6th place in the first race at Silverstone. And then obviously had such an impressive run in the first race here, and then did everything right in this race. Made a move, maybe got a bit lucky with the contact that Sven de Vries had with Nathan Saxon, but regardless, he did everything that he possibly could and set a great victory. 1.1 seconds clear of Nathan Saxon. Those two have been great all day. They were running away in the first race. They ran away in the second race. Cadwalder, an excellent run to the podium. Things are going to be super tight between himself and Sven de Vries. I don't actually think they would have changed any gaps. I think it might be still between 2 or 3 points between those two for second in the championship. Johnny Guindy, not a great round. 7th in the first race. A good recovery to 5th in this race after dropping back to sort of 8th or 9th place. Jablonski in the number 10 car, well inside the top 10 in 6th place. Good drive from him. We know his race pace is quite a bit better than his qualifying, or at least the pre-qualifying pace rather. Ibadi as well, number 14 car, down 9th place, getting the Skip Barber instructors to help him up the grid. It's been a good round, and like you say, when we head over to Italy, to Monza, we're going to see a lot of slipstream there. I think it's going to be a great one, Elliot.
Yeah, absolutely, and that is one of the also another one of my favorite tracks. We've been going back to back with 2 tracks that I really like. This one being the host to I believe it's the Petit Le Mans, and then there's also I think it's the 24 Hours of Lemons, which is a bunch of beat up cars running around this track. So it was a great Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Happy Father's Day to my dad. Yeah, to Ed. But yeah, absolutely. I think that this was exactly what we needed to see. Garcia ultimately finding his pace. Unfortunately for Saxon, he won the first race, and no knock to Sven de Vries, but as these guys are battling going into that first or the dip down off the straightaway, it is very challenging to figure out or to navigate the traffic, especially with cars ahead, and figuring out your braking zone with cars ahead. So unfortunately for Saxon, getting knocked out by Sven de Vries and potentially losing his ability to hold his position in first place. But we will see more of this racing as we mentioned. We're going to Monza next week. Sign up this week. You just go to skipbarber.com. All of the information is listed there. You pay $20. You pay a $20 ticket to enter. You download Assetto Corsa, which we're racing on. You have an entire week to practice, where you can run hot laps and basically compare your times to the other drivers in the series. And then on Monday, which is tomorrow for Monza, for each round, the Monday is the day that you have 2 hours, a 2-hour window to set your fastest time, and then the top 20 times are taken, and potentially we'll see you next week at Monza if you're able to qualify in the top 20. My name is Elliot Bishop. I was joined here by Lewis McGlade. Lewis, any closing thoughts?
No, I think we've had a great run here, but we will see you, as you said, in a week's time, June 28th, same time, same place, and in that time we'll be at the Temple of Speed. Until then, goodbye.